And moving to West Africa now, Ivory Coast political crisis continues, and the country's president-elect says he's pessimistic about the African Union's efforts for a resolution. VOA West Africa correspondent Scott Stearns reports.
The presidents of Chad, Mauritania, South Africa and Tanzania went to Ivory Coast as part of African Union efforts to end the standoff between rival governments there. They met with incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo, who says he was re-elected when the country's Constitutional Council annulled as fraudulent nearly 10% of all ballots cast in November's vote. They also met with former Prime Minister Alassane Ouattara, who says he was elected president based on results announced by the Electoral Commission and certified by the United Nations. Mr. Ouattara says he's pessimistic about this African Union mission because past mediation efforts have failed to convince Mr. Gbagbo to give up power peacefully. South African President Jacob Zuma was surrounded by angry Ouattara supporters because his government is tentatively backing Mr. Gbagbo's call for a recount of the ballots. Mr. Ouattara, the United Nations, and West Africa's regional alliance oppose such a move. The African Union heads of state now have 1 week to decide how best to resolve this crisis, a decision that the African Union says will be legally binding on all Ivorians. But the African Union has no mechanism for enforcing that provision. Mr. Gbagbo's government says it will accept African Union mediation only so long as it does not challenge the legitimacy of the Constitutional Council decision that Mr. Gbagbo won. Mr. Ouattara says he will not share power with Mr. Gbagbo and will not agree to face-to-face talks with his rival until Mr. Gbagbo concedes. The United Nations says nearly 300 people have already died in post-election violence as fighting between Ouattara supporters and the pro-Gbagbo military continues in the Abobo and Kumasi neighborhoods of the commercial capital. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Dakar.